This week on the show, Allan's heading over to Sweden and is going to be enjoying BSD, but we have a great interview with Andrew Pantyukhin to bring you. We're going to be discussing everything from contributions to FreeBSD, which technologies have worked best in the data center, config management, and much more. Episode 108, ServeUp BSD, recorded September 23rd, 2015. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Allan Jude.
And we're recording this way early, but, we got places to go, people to see, and Allan's just jet setting like crazy here, but it looks like Allan's going to be away this week. He's over in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And what exactly you got going on there, Allan?
So Drew asked me and a bunch of other people to help run a panel at ACM, which is Association of Computer Machinery. They're having a conference called Women Courage to encourage women in IT. And it's at University of Uppsala in Sweden, and it's the weekend before EuroBSDCon. So a bunch of us have extended our trip to go to that event as well. And so I'll be there on a panel with a bunch of other people about why open source is an interesting career path.
Okay. But yeah, that's going to be cool. So how long does that put you in Sweden for then?
Yeah, so almost 2 weeks. So I'll leave today, when this episode originally would have been recorded on the 23rd, and I don't get back until after EuroBSDCon is over on the 5th. So that means that this episode that you're watching now and next week's episode will be
pre-recorded.
Yes, pre-recorded and kind of our regular special. We still have never missed a week of the show. So.
Yeah, we haven't had to do a rerun yet, so
exactly.
How cool is that? We're not about to start now.
It's like, how dead? That's 100% uptime. What do you want?
That is right. That's right. We're trying to go for like FreeBSD or BSD here where you get good uptime.
Yeah.
Well, that just means the following week when you do come back, we'll have a ton more to talk about. Yes, I'm sure yours going to be full of all kinds of stories from EuroBSDCon and such.
Plus all the regular news that you'll have missed out on. So definitely
everything will have accumulated.
But you can just tune in like usual every week, and you'll have a fresh episode waiting for you. Don't worry. But yes, once we're back to regular live episodes, you'll have just as much fun.
That's right. And so we do have a long interview for you this week as well. So you're not messing out. You're getting your money's worth this week for sure. So definitely sit back and enjoy the interview. But before we do start it, we got to tease you a little bit. Get you ready for it. Andrew Pantyukhin's going to be talking to us, but we have an advertiser we need to mention first, which is going to be IX that we start with this week. And of course, the URL for that's going to be ixsystems.com/BSD Now, where you can go. Just because we're out of town doesn't mean these guys take a week off. I mean, come on. They want to build you servers and build you all kinds of cool storage appliances. And they're still busy working doing that. And you need to get something ordered so that you can send in information to me and Allan, and we can talk about it on the air and make other people jealous. And we all drool over the pictures and just how cool is that?
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be something huge like what I bought recently because I needed huge amounts of storage. But so like Chris says, a little FreeNAS Mini under his desk there is, tiny, a lot less expensive, but it's quiet and it's high power and it does everything you need it to do.
I just sometimes forget it's sitting down there. Actually, it's about 2 feet from me right now, and the light's on. It's doing stuff.
Yeah.
Backups are happening, and storage and serving is happening, and it just works. So
machines so reliable you will forget they even exist.
That's right. So yeah, I mean they offer everything from those tiny FreeNAS minis up to the crazy mega systems we've seen, like the 80 core box, or what was the system, 24 NICs with 24 10 gig NICs. Was that it?
That was it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean they've done some wild stuff, and if you're going to order something wild like that, definitely tell us about it because those are fun ones to talk about. But tell us about the minis you've got too, and how well those are working for you. Take a picture of yourself and send it in. We'd love to show that on a future show.
Yeah, like even cool. The 1U router I have at my house here. I bought a 1U short depth router with like no storage in it at all. It has like a 8 gig USB stick attached to the motherboard that IX did for me, and it works great, and it was very not overly expensive considering that it's a full quad core Xeon processor with ECC RAM and all that, and it's routing all the traffic for my racks full of gear, because those storage servers aren't much use if they don't have good access to the network.
That's right. That's right. So, again, folks, just mentioning like we've told you in the past, but this week, make it happen. Go to ixsystems.com/BSD Now. Get in touch with their sales guys. Tell them exactly what you want, and they will do their best to hook you up and fix whatever problem it is you're trying to solve. And when you're talking to them, tell them you heard it on BSD Now, because they love hearing from our listeners. And of course, we appreciate that as well. So now, sit back, enjoy the interview with Andrew, and I'm sure it'll be fascinating. It's a nice long one, so you're definitely, like I said, getting your money's worth this week, and sit and enjoy. We're joined now by Andrew Pantyukhin, who's here to talk to us about his BSD background, and he's also a product developer with a long BSD history. So first of all, Andrew, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So go ahead and get us started a little bit on your background. How did you first get introduced to and get involved with BSDs?
Okay, so this is an easy story, and it was around 2003, I think, and we were running a small home ISP for a couple dozen clients,
Sure.
and we were doing it all on Windows, which didn't really scale that much, and the server was crashing like every single day, multiple times, and then the whole security model was around MAC addresses, and people started figuring out how to go around that. And we needed some, more structure and security. And I was checking out like how to set up PPP over Ethernet on Windows, and it was pretty much impossible at that point.
Sure.
It was like really, really difficult to get right. And so I like at that time I had some experience with Linux, like back from high school and university, like a little bit of Linux and Unix, other Unix-like systems, but not really that much. So I needed to bootstrap, and I didn't have that much time for that because I had like a real job and my classes. So I needed a solution which I could read about, which would give me like the basics and also everything that I needed to implement an immediate solution outright and just go ahead and do it. So I started looking online for a Linux distribution which would have that kind of documentation, like complete with basics and all the details that I needed. And you just couldn't find it. I checked all the popular ones, Red Hat, SUSE, Gentoo Slackware, and I don't remember the exact moment, but I kind of remembered, like, the FreeBSD came to mind. I didn't have, I think, any experience with it before, but I looked at the docs, I looked at the documentation, and I was completely sold in like 10 minutes. It was phenomenal. It was probably the handbook at that time, and probably still is one of the definitive guides on Unix as a whole, but also has all the necessary details that you need to set up anything you want with the operating system. So I basically printed out all the. At that point, it was like 1,400 pages. I printed it all out because I didn't have anything like an iPad. It was just. And in a single night, I read through most of it. I skipped some chapters on X11 and stuff, but I think like 70% of it I just covered. It was that exciting. And that next day, like within like 48 hours of studying on that, I had a functional router on the same like box which used to crash a lot. It was now rock solid. I had a PPPoE server, and then in another day I had a CGI script and shell scripts which kind of around IP firewall, which counted all the traffic. And for the first time ever, we had like every client we had a real-time traffic counter, which at that point no big ISP even provided. So that was really awesome for me, and that was how I started. And then I kind of started looking more and more into this because it was like interesting from multiple perspectives. And I think by next year I was kind of serious enough to switch my desktop over to from Windows to FreeBSD. And at the same time, I got a job that was completely kind of into systems engineering at a university in Moscow. And that was when I started to go like more and more serious about networking and systems engineering, and that kind of eventually led up to me unexpectedly getting a commit bid. Yeah, so that was a very, very interesting ride, and that's a kind of testament because later on I started teaching courses like at another university on Unix and FreeBSD, and I saw a lot of people younger and more grown up that were very interested in learning more about Unix, but I saw them struggle a lot. They kind of were doing it for years and still at a level which was not satisfactory to them or their employers. And I think getting passionate from the start and kind of diving very deep and like getting very kind of passionate and excited, that's key to learning something as potentially complicated as FreeBSD in no time and having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. So you mentioned getting a commit bit. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the things you did to earn the commit bit and what you did with it once you had it?
Right. So when I started at the university, I actually another like a funny thing about it. When I was switching from Windows to FreeBSD, one of the regrets was I was at the time I was still kind of I was a sophomore and I was still gaming. One of the games was I think some FPS like Counter-Strike, and I was okay. I need to let it go and completely switch to FreeBSD because it's more interesting for me. But then when I started working at the university as a sysadmin, they gave me a moderately recent box as a workstation with an NVIDIA video card, which which turned out to support FreeBSD flawlessly. And at that time, it was around 2005, it was that rare period when Wine was the emulator was, or rather not the emulator, was stable enough to kind of support OpenGL flawlessly on FreeBSD. And on my third day on the on the job in the evening after work hours, I was able to get Counter-Strike up and running, and then I started playing with my coworkers, and it ran like more like faster and more reliably. So I was kind of like, but eventually I started like digging deep into. I read like a few thousand pages of what my colleagues suggested on networks and systems, and we had not just FreeBSD but a lot of Solaris, Linux systems. Also, I think an old HPUX box. And all sort of stuff like what you would expect in a good university lab, and but I was comparing all of that to each other, and I was more and more reinforced in my opinion that FreeBSD culture was very special and very attractive to engineers. So I was kind of doing for the sake of convenience as a desktop user and for the sake of keeping our servers up to date and running smoothly, I was updating more and more ports and contributing updates as a contributor, and kind of a plan was growing in my mind. I was thinking like maybe if I keep doing this for like 2 or 3 years, and I'm kind of good enough at this, then maybe I should have a go and try to get a commit bit. So, and maybe a week from the moment that thought came to mind, I was in an ISC, FreeBSD related ISC channel, and a couple of Russian FreeBSD committers told me, "Hey, you're that guy that sends all those problem reports with new ports, right?" So you're not getting away with this. So here's your commit bit.
They punished you.
It was really, really unexpected and excited because like FreeBSD committers, I think for a lot of people, it's a kind of milestone that you can kind of aspire to. So getting that was extremely unexpected and quite humbling, but also I felt all the responsibility. So I tried to take it seriously and kind of read through all the guides, forward and backwards, and a few times I was trying to really not mess it up, and I hope I didn't mess it up too much. So basically, when I got to a commit bit, I had really good mentors, and I kind of kept up with keeping all the ports that we used in production up to date, and also porting whatever we needed in production, and kind of stepped up the effort, and also like sorted out my desktop life on FreeBSD. And at some point, I understood that, okay, this is a nice routine, because like at some point it got over like 100 ports that I maintained on a regular basis and was quite serious about it. But I also understood that we need to look at more infrastructural issues, because if you're just paying attention to the routine, you'll just it doesn't scale that much. So I started getting interested in infrastructural problems, and nothing too major, but from a desktop perspective, at some point I used a lot of Mozilla utilities, Thunderbird, Firefox, sometimes SeaMonkey. All that sort of software is still well and alive, and I was using all of that on FreeBSD, and I used a lot of extensions, and it just made sense to me that actually when you look inside, when you look at how all those Mozilla pieces of software and compatibles, by the way, third party as well, that use Gecko engine, how they deal with extensions, it's obvious that the extensions are shareable, and it just made sense for me to make sure that there might be a centralized way to manage their updates. So I came up with the XPI infrastructure for installing and updating and maintaining Mozilla extensions centrally, so that all the Mozilla software that you're using would benefit from it simultaneously, and there wouldn't be any wasted hard drive space and stuff like that. Sure. And then like one of the convenience feature that I worked on was shorthands for how's it called, for the sites that with tables with source code. So because at the time, like whenever you ported something or updated something, you had to put all the websites, and usually multiple.
Yeah, to list them all.
Yeah, so I kind of try to hack up a system of macros that would collect the most common ones, like SourceForge, which at that time was still useful.
Yeah.
A lot of others, so that instead of dozens of lines of long HTTP URLs, you would just put a little macro like
use GitHub or something.
Yeah. Or currently use GitHub or something. And I think it, like little stuff like that saves you only a few seconds per port. But when you look at 300 or 400 developers working on ports, it can save a lot of man hours over a course of months or years.
Well, yeah, especially if SourceForge adds an extra mirror and removes one, you change that in one place in a make file instead of in every single port that uses SourceForge.
Oh, exactly. And I was also happy to do a couple of Google Summer of Code programs. So actually, the first one I applied as a student. I was still enrolled as a student, and I applied to do something with FreeBSD, and it was the exact year when Google had a major glitch, and they sent out confirmations like you were accepted to everyone who applied in error. They didn't correct the error for like 24 hours. I think it was 2007 or something. So I was yeah, I'm doing this. Like 3 months of hacking on FreeBSD funded by Google, and I almost asked for my employer to kind of let him know that I would be doing that and that my work attention would be limited. But then, like 12 hours later, Google sent out, okay, we're guys, we apologize. But then, like much more rewarding experience came a couple of years later when, like, 2 years, 2 years on end, I was mentoring. One was we were revamping BSD port MK, BSD Perl MK, the whole Perl infrastructure for ports. And at that time, so both times I made a little mistake. First time I over-involved myself, and second time I under-involved. So first time, I think it was Gabor that we were working on it. And towards the end, he was kind of getting more and more busy with his classes, and I had to pitch in and contribute a lot of code to the work. And it was well needed because at that time, I think it was 2009, BSD Perl MK was asking to be rewritten, and we kind of did good enough job at that. And next year, I think it was Ivan Voris, and it was 2010 when I was involved with when I started being involved with a startup. And I had less and less time, and so most of the work he did without my close supervision. But it was a nice experience both times. So to summarize, I spent about 3 years being actively involved as a committer, and just try to keep up my routine, maintaining a fair amount of ports, but also pay attention to infrastructural things that could help us scale so that the routine would take less and less time. Something that every admin strives to do, I think.
Sure. So aside from, all the ports work and getting Counter-Strike working and all that, what other kinds of things have you built on BSD?
So the interesting part came, towards the end of my work at Gupke. We got more funding, and we actually got some quite nice hardware. We got an IBM mainframe, which I didn't play much with, but we also got a whole rack of blade servers from IBM, which got branded supercomputer. I think we were like top 47 in Russia and maybe top like 300 in the world. And I was really earnestly trying to get Linux up and running on that, but we knew that we had to try like a lot of different pieces of a lot of different types of configuration. So the only way to do it rapidly was through NFS booting, and I was really earnestly trying to get like Red Hat, I think, or CentOS Linux up and running for like weeks. And the only way to do NFS booting with Linux is turned out to be you had to really recompile a lot of critical parts of the kernel to insert NFS support, but also all the drivers, because it couldn't hot load drivers when you NFS booted a Linux kernel, at least at that time. So it was 2.8, I think. And but when you recompile the kernel, you basically lost official support of all the proprietary software, and you had to hack around that. So at that point, if we did that, if we custom compiled Linux kernel, we lost almost all the advantages that Linux had over FreeBSD, and so I was kind of desperate, and we needed to get it up and running. And it was like already 2 weeks that I've been mucking around with Linux, and so okay, we'll try. I also sent a couple of emails. One was, I think, to Brooks Davis, who was running a big FreeBSD cluster at Aerospace Corporation in America. And another email went to, and by the way, this university was oil and gas, so like there would be a lot of computational, like HPC tasks running. And so my second email went to a person who presented one time at BSDCan, and he was exactly doing the same thing, running a FreeBSD cluster that was dedicated to HPC tasks in an oil and gas context. And the talk was secretive. It wasn't filmed by his request because a lot of things he was talking about were kind of proprietary. And I wasn't present at that BSDCan, so I had to email him and ask around, like, why did he choose FreeBSD over Linux, blah blah blah. And he told me that in oil and gas, like most of the software you got, they didn't rely on any kind of specific drivers that Linux had. He didn't need InfiniBand that much, which wasn't present in FreeBSD at the time. But what he did need is a lot of those pieces of software were not good at handling failures, spontaneous failures of nodes. So when he was running Linux on like 100 nodes, he would get a failure every week or so. But when he switched to FreeBSD, he didn't have a single failure for like a year, and that was critical to kind of the same pieces of software, proprietary software that we were going to run. So I collected responses from Brooks Davis and that guy, and I sent it to our group, my colleagues, and said, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna try to set it up with FreeBSD because there's industry experience supporting this, and I know we can get NFS boot up and running without any custom compiling, working out of the box." And in half a day, without any exaggeration, I had it up and running. That was my first time like doing NFS boot. I just read the handbook, a couple of official guides on this. That's it, and it worked quite flawlessly. We also got a NetApp filer, Fast 2050, I think, and yeah, it was like some hardware that was really kind of privileged to work with. I think it built on the engineering culture and excellence that was also present in the FreeBSD project. So the NetApp filers are that good, and it integrated quite well with the Linux infrastructure we had, FreeBSD infrastructure. For a while, I was setting up all the LDAP accounts and pieces of that. I discovered a lot of shortcomings in Linux NFS implementations, both version 3 and version 4, as opposed to FreeBSD, which was basically done by a single person, Rick Macklem, of course with community involvement and support. But I think still, like, much of the code is the things that Rick Macklem contributed, and it was mostly flawless, not function complete, but very, very reliable.
Okay.
So we were doing all that, and I started giving talks at conferences in Russia about like what FreeBSD is, but also what my workflow as a sysadmin is, and that was interesting to a lot of people. And I started doing like more, like talking about more borderline stuff about like how internet could be improved with new protocols which would be more distributed. And at that time I was noticed by a group of entrepreneurs that were setting up a new startup in Moscow, and like the core product of the startup would be a very large scale music streaming service the first one legal in Russia and Eastern Europe and all the emerging markets. So our target was Russia and CIS, sort of ex-USSR, 15 countries that used to be part of USSR, and that's like 300 million people. And like all of those people didn't have any access to legal music streaming. Like Spotify was just starting out, and it was blocked in all of those markets. And so we were starting to do that. And like one of the things we did was early on was strike a deal with a pre-existing service that was doing that was not completely legally cleared yet. And so what we decided to do is like acquire the user base, which was like 2 million people.
Oh, wow.
And move them to, and that was like a pure download site and not completely like legally cleared. So we were going to kind of migrate all of that user base to our infrastructure and switch them to 100% legal service with same amount of music, even more, because we kind of signed with most of the majors and a lot of like 15,000 independent labels represented aggregates. So we started designing infrastructure, and that was 2010. So we kind of were well funded from the start, and we started consulting with all the leading experts in the field, both in Russia and abroad. And the usual way that you would do solving the problem would actually be several parts of the infrastructure. One would be master data that you would get from your content providers. Another would be processing, because you needed to re-encode all the data, and there would be also images involved and all of that. Another part would be a CDN to stream all of it. And yet another part would be a front end that would handle all the non-content related, like, well, whatever would be running Python and stuff like that. So like 4 or maybe 5 different parts, and each of them would require different proprietary hardware. Each of them would require integration. And we're starting calculating, and for the amount of data and users that we're expecting, that would easily be like tens of millions of dollars in upfront capex. And that was kind of not the thing. Like we looked at every other startup, including Spotify, that was doing it, and they were spending a lot less with custom built infrastructure. Okay, so okay, let's do it custom, we thought. Let's do it custom we have some FreeBSD expertise, and still we were kind of calculating with usual means, like how many servers you would need if you want like to support 2 million users upfront, 10% of them streaming simultaneously, and maybe like more and more users
signing up and stuff.
Yeah, so that was still running into, if you looked at like pre-built Dell hardware, it was still running to like 10 or 20 million in capex. So we said, okay, let's figure out how to do it with a single million in capex, and maybe we can pull it off, because like we read all the stories about all the other streaming startups around the world, starting with small infrastructures. But of course, they didn't have a massive user base that would be immediately. Okay. So anyway, the conclusion that I came up with was we need to have a single integrated infrastructure with every node doing master data processing like locally, and also streaming data to the external world, and like when we looked at the problem this way, everything kind of came together organically. One thing that really helped us out from the start is we hired Igor Sisoyev, the original author of Nginx, who is now CTO of Nginx Incorporated. And at the time, there was it was still purely open source project. There was no company behind Nginx. So we hired him to kind of consult us a little bit on that. And he had a prior experience with running FreeBSD and streaming a lot of data from FreeBSD, because Rambler, a large internet search company in Russia, was 2 years prior to that, they were experimenting with streaming movies from a FreeBSD server farm.
Sure.
And it was similar, not quite the same, but similar profile of usage. So we decided to do it in a similar way they do it, differently. And I think I gave a few talks about the details, but in short, it was a single UFS file system per hard drive,
Okay.
and large supermicro servers with 24 drives each. 2 terabyte drives was the largest available at the time. We quickly figured out that Hitachi was the most reliable and stuff, blah blah blah. And thanks to some of the Igor's suggestion, thanks to Nginx, we were able to saturate 6 gigabits per server from just hard drives, no SSDs, just hard drives.
Yeah.
And we were testing, load testing thousands of streams per server. So that's hundreds of streams per hard drive. So with very little tuning, very little read ahead tuning, like a megabyte or half a megabyte of read ahead, and a bit of cooperation from Nginx, thousands of streams simultaneously per server were not a problem at all. So that was very perfect. And in just under 18 months, we grew the infrastructure to a couple petabytes of raw space, and we were managing. So we were managing all of this with a Postgres dispatcher that kept track of all the hashes and redundancies, and the scheme of storage was pretty easy. We named each file with the hash of its contents. So you could do what ZFS is now helping you do for free. We had to do manually, but also locally, because you didn't have to go to the database. You just had to compare the file's contents to its name.
Well, we're going to interrupt you here for a moment. I hope you guys are enjoying the interview. Don't worry. We're only about halfway through. There's still plenty more to come. But of course, we'll give you a little break here for a moment. We do want to mention another sponsor this week, which is going to be DigitalOcean. And of course, the website for that, digitalocean.com. And you don't even have to call these guys. You can literally just go to the website, fill out a little bit of information, create an account, and next thing you know, you got a VM spun up running FreeBSD. You can use the coupon code FreeBSD Now, and that'll give you an extra $10 credit you can put on your account, which is good for about 2 months of running a VM that's backed on an SSD.
Yes.
I mean, that's just a great deal all around. And if you're looking for a way to play with FreeBSD, maybe you don't have anything local you can set it up on, which shame on you, you should. But if you don't, you can set something up in the cloud and start experimenting. At that price, there's no reason not to.
The thing you set up at your house won't have a gigabit connection to the internet and a terabyte of bandwidth included.
That's true. That's true. And then you can play with it at work too. Don't tell anyone I told you to do that. But
well, no, I know people have set it up with OwnCloud or something running FreeBSD in order to sync files between home and work, or between home and the cottage, or between other people or whatever.
Well, Quassel Core comes to mind as well.
That's where mine
IRC. Yeah, if you need an IRC relay. And matter of fact, I've been meaning to move mine up to DigitalOcean. It's still running here at the house, and it's annoying because we get enough power outages that it has to reset, and I lose chat history and all that. So that's going to be going up on a droplet. Maybe I'll be doing that actually while you're in Sweden, Allan. I have a couple weeks off. I can finally get to some of these projects that I've been sitting on the table like I can do this. But yeah, that would definitely be a good one as well. But of course, I mean, their droplets scale way up. So if you need a lot more storage space, more transfer, need a lot more CPUs, you can also spin them up and only pay for the amount that you're using it as well. You don't have to necessarily.
They also have hourly pricing? Yeah. So
So
if you need a machine with 64 gigs of RAM, 20 cores, 640 gigs of SSD space, and 9 terabytes of transfer, that'll cost 95 cents an hour.
That's right. That's right. So if you just need to crunch something real big or serve a lot of data for a short window, like they make it all possible. I mean, they even have an API where you can set up everything and script it all. So you don't even have to manually go through the website and do it yourself. So how cool is that? They make it simple. And as we've mentioned for our OpenBSD fans out there are ways you can load OpenBSD as well. And we have talked about that in previous episodes. So go hit the website and find those instructions, and you can get your OpenBSD up and running up in the cloud as well. So definitely send us your feedback on that too. If you guys have used that and are having good success and luck with that, let us know. We like to hear feedback from our listeners as well.
Yes.
So anyway, I guess we'll take you right back to the interview now. So you enjoy the other half, and we'll see you on the other side here. So what were all the technologies used? You mentioned, I guess you're not using ZFS. It was UFS. How about like Geom or Jails or any of that?
Yeah, so jails came in handy, but actually just part of them, which were separate networking stacks, which were still experimental at the time. So actually, what's really I'm gonna as we go praise a little bit all the engineering culture and communication culture around FreeBSD. It was really critical for us to have, as a business, to have very clear channels of communication with developers, and it really helped us that once people knew that we were experimental with like several routing tables per server at gigabits of traffics and with IPv6, like for free, several people were almost dedicated to us from the community to help us hash out all the issues. If we didn't have that kind of communication, we would never be able to use beta or alpha quality features and get away with it. So that was critical. So we used Nginx and HTTP for all communications, both internal and external. And internal had to be ideal because well, the redundancy had to be perfect. If a single hard drive failed, we needed to restore redundancy over the whole server farm in minutes. Otherwise, we would run a risk of data loss. And what helped us was we had a similar networking, similar infrastructure for all of it. So the same Nginx instance served internal and external, internal kind of data rebalancing and external streaming to thousands of customers. And the way we got away with it was having separate routing and networking stacks for internal and external communications, which provided complete security, or at least as much as we needed security. So that was really handy, and obviously we at the same time we had experience and we're looking at leading solutions from Isilon, NetApp, Panacess. Also, we had an expert consulting us who was a fan of Polyserve and distributed network file system. And we kind of borrowed all of that experience. And in everything we engineered and designed, we tried to surpass everything, every other solution in speed, in total cost of ownership, in just about everything. The only downside, of course, it was a custom-built solution, so the bus factor was very low, with me and a couple other people helping up. And also, what was unique was that I was CTO for the project, and I could only pay like 10-20% of my attention to all of this FreeBSD infrastructure, because I also had a development and also got involved in product design. So it was really hard. I was not 100% dedicated to it. What helped us out was community support, as I mentioned, and at some point we really were lucky to hire first Ruslan Yermilov, who's a member of Core, I think, currently or previously, and he was like, he's really a genius. What you can rely on in the FreeBSD communities is that the rock stars are really the rock stars. If people are kind of shining within FreeBSD, then when you invite them to join you as a colleague in your business, they really bring a lot of value with them. So Ruslan was quite instrumental to kind of rehashing some of the problems, some of the technical debt that was accumulated, but also another person who was very helpful was Sevan Janian, who is kind of vocal supporter of BSD communities. I think he's currently a NetBSD package source committer, and he was one of our first international hires, which is quite interesting because wherever you go in Western Europe and in the US, every startup you look at, almost every startup you look at, there's some international talent involved. But of course, when you look at Russia and also China and India and other emerging markets, then it's very rare to find international talent in startups. But we really needed top-notch talent from around the world, so we needed international talent as well badly. That was one of the reasons for me really diving deep into going to BSD Days and EuroBSDCon for a few years in succession, and BSDCan, and talking about our solutions, our view towards how systems engineering in relation to FreeBSD should probably be evolved, but also attracting new talent. And I think, yeah, that effort was quite a success.
Cool.
So yeah, the whole thing that we did with the startup was quite successful. And actually, by the time we launched, a few other big companies that were doing video and audio streaming in the country were actually looking at us to license the CDN infrastructure, because it was like well below well below the cost. And but little did they know, of course, the inner workings, because it was quite a bit of technical debt. But at the same time, the way it got, like, our experience got confirmed in the highest sense was that so while working with Igor Sosoyev, the Nginx author, at some point because we were evolving as a holding, there were a few kind of separate companies working under the same roof by that time: a music streaming service, a book reading, kind of book streaming service, which was one of the first in the world that allowed you to read any amount of books for a single subscription. And some other projects, and we kind of told Igor, why don't you incorporate Nginx as part of the holding, and then you'll have all the time you need to develop it. And he took our advice, but actually decided to go independently and found his own investors. And now, of course, he's a separate company, Nginx Inc., which is quite successful. And very early on, one of the major customers was Netflix, which is now serving 30% of. So, and when they published the OpenConnect infrastructure, because it's all open source by now, I was quite amazed and quite excited to see that 90% of it is exactly what we did.
Yeah, what
so
you've
separate
done.
UFS drives, Nginx, and fast networking.
And what it was exactly like this kind of evolution of ideas is exactly what I was looking for, because we were never very secretive or proprietary about what we were doing. But on the contrary, we saw validation in the community, so that more would jump on and try and help the whole infrastructure evolve, so that eventually we would benefit. And Netflix jumping onto the bandwagon was like the ultimate validation of everything we did. So that was really, really nice.
So when you're doing that kind of thing, do dealing with external vendors to get the hardware. And I know from another talk you gave at BSDCan that some of the servers you rented from places. What was your experience dealing with vendors and server providers to actually get support for FreeBSD, or even just machines with FreeBSD on them?
Right. So it's a lot easier when I guess when you're a growing business, we're well funded at that, because then you automatically get vendors very much involved. I think IX Systems, the hardware, the well-known hardware vendor in California, experiences the same kind of support from vendors, because they're very, very happy to be very deeply involved at any level. So we only used a local vendor in Russia who was an official Supermicro distributor to build the hardware for us. We worked together with them to figure out what's the best hardware that automatically supports FreeBSD without any custom BIOSes, custom ROMs, and we still got a few glitches. Like we used a LSI 1068 controller for all of our servers, because we tried a few other modifications. It didn't work out quite well. 1068 was the most reliable, and still we had intermittent issues. So rather than really like working with vendors working with Supermicro or LSI to come up with custom ROMs, the faster way for us to deal with it was to work around it, to build to script around it, so that whenever a controller hangs, you reboot the server or so, and also build the infrastructure that intermittent failures would not be visible to consumers, to customers, and that was kind of that paid off really quickly. I will not claim that everything worked ideally, but the context for us having potentially faulty parts of our infrastructures and making do with that, and making sure that whatever fails, we still survive, and as few people as possible notice it at all. That really kind of drove us in the right direction, I think.
Okay. So good.
So yes, and you mentioned, as I mentioned, we also had we kind of had hybrid infrastructure with content stored on the servers we actually owned, but front end and back end working on rented servers, because that was a lot easier to scale if we had a lot more customers, and we still had much fewer sysadmin staff that we needed to. It was still me in the driving chair with just 10-20% time that I could dedicate to all of these tasks, and one or two colleagues that would also help me with that. There was not enough to handle separate infrastructures. So we started building everything so that every type of server would be managed in a very similar way. So yes, then when we came up with kind of something that I called unified configuration for FreeBSD, and not any kind of breakthrough concept, actually very very obvious, just born of a desire to have as little custom configuration per server as possible, and as much common configuration common to every kind of service as possible. And that's what I gave a couple of talks, included one at BSDCan, I think.
Yep. That actually leads me right into one of our other questions we had here. But did anything ever become of the config management tool that you presented at BSDCan for 2012?
Right. So actually, that question should be directed at the audience, probably, because the only goal of that was to kind of plant a few seeds, a few ideas, and see if I think Allan was one of the, and a few people as well were very receptive to the idea of kind of streamlining the whole configuration, but it's still quite novel. And well, internally, what came out of it got a little bit more polished, and by the time I switched from the startup to other endeavors, there wasn't enough, I think, technical team, because we had kind of a transitionary period where politics got involved, and yeah, a little bit of churn in the team, where a lot of talent left to pursue other endeavors, but some of the team stayed. And so we kind of tried to transition as much knowledge as possible, but still 2 years later, much of the same infrastructure was still working well without too much support. And I really didn't expect that, because it still had a lot of technical debt. It still had to be maintained, all of that. I didn't expect it to survive that well into the future. But well, that's obviously a testament to the team that still stayed and maintained it, but also the unexpected power of FreeBSD to, all those stories where you leave a server and the uptime goes into a decade or so.
Yep.
I think all of that is kind of true. So I think, yeah, we achieved what we needed with the concept. It was very much a prototype, but it was useful in production, and we're quite happy with it.
Nice. So in the future, do you have any upcoming features that you're really excited about going into, say, 11?
Going into
any features that are coming up in FreeBSD that you're excited about?
Oh, right. So actually, yeah, a lot of the things that, so the general idea that we were struggling with and solving was that like from the 80s, I think everyone who was managing Unix was managing a few different machines running Unix at the same time, and especially going from 90s and on, you would have like maybe dozens of FreeBSD machines, and so you had to do a lot of tasks on each machine, and that goes not just for FreeBSD, but any Unix, any Linux. For a lot of administrators, a lot of repeated effort got obvious, and I think every company was inventing a way to deal with it. Yahoo, Google, any big company is reinventing sort of a proprietary wheel that they mostly keep into themselves. There are also some solutions like configuration management solutions, CF Engine, Chef, and all of that stuff that just address part of that. There are also, proprietary solutions within the company are full-blown, full stack. There's also OpenStack, which is kind of a nice idea to be as big as possible, but also I think is drowning in its own, crumbling under its own weight by now. And when I looked at it, I thought, okay, well, definitely for our company, we'll definitely reinvent the wheel, because there's no other way around it. But what is the way to kind of push it upstream? And going upstream is like 3 times as difficult as developing something internally. So so giving talks was one first step of the strategy. And the basic notion is, rather than invent third-party solutions that come at the problem from like sideways, why don't we develop the user land in a way that would have more tools, that would evolve the tool set so that multi-machine management would get easier and easier. And the latest features, such as RCconf tools,
like sysrc,
yes, they are very, very handy for that, for exactly that kind of purpose, to automate to automate management across a number of machines. Also, like simple stuff, like I think a couple of weeks before, or maybe in this new version, we have a tool to. I think we have a new tool to extract a serial number from the hard drive. We kind of had. No. We have a new tool. So in the company, we developed a lot of small nifty tools like that. So one of them was to extract a serial number, which you really don't have a tool for in the FreeBSD that solves all the edge cases. You sometimes have to use disk info. Sometimes you have to use
cam control
tools. Yeah, a lot of those. So we had to write a tool to kind of aggregate that, which would work for any hard drive, no matter how it is connected. I think this time we had a stock tool for that.
Sure.
But another tool that is being incorporated into FreeBSD is determine which kind of file system is that.
yes,
so you
FS type.
FS type. So we had to write a shell script to do that, and it's kind of trivial, but you have to have it very implemented very reliably. Because why did we need that? You could ask, because we only had UFS, but actually we didn't just have UFS. One of the cool stories that we had was ingestion. When you're running a music streaming service, you're getting millions of tracks from your content partners, and incrementally you get them online, but the first batch comes on hard drives, and they came in any format imaginable. So the first batch actually came from our colleagues in, well, don't ask why, but logistically it came from China on some Western digital drives with ext4 file system.
Oh, no.
Every single hard drive was corrupted, because who knows? But they were new hard drives, but Western Digital was not good at all at that time. And ext4. So, and at that time, FreeBSD only supported ext2. So I started Googling, what should we do? Maybe we should run a virtual Linux and stuff. But actually, previous summer of code, a student did an experimental implementation of ext3. And ext3 is basically compatible with ext4 in that you can mount ext4 without journaling. So it was perfect for us. So we compiled the prototype code. It worked perfectly well. It worked even better than Linux, because when you try it in Linux, if you get a badly corrupted drive, it just crashes. But if you do it in FreeBSD, it survives it, and you can try to restore it over and over again. So we tried that, and we kind of restored 99% of everything. That was just very unexpected, astonishing, and very pleasing. But then when we started to work with other vendors of content, they shipped us anything from FAT to NTFS to TrueCrypt encrypted hard drives. And it turned out that every one of them was perfectly mountable and readable under FreeBSD, like much more than I would expect even on Linux. So that was very unexpected, and there are a lot of little stories like that where just FreeBSD comes up and saves the day. So a lot of times we just needed, and everything was distributed across several data centers. So we just needed like technical people to, okay, you go there, you pull out any random drives, or like some drives that we would highlight. Didn't really matter because everything redundant and stuff, and you push this NTFS, FAT, or Linux drives, or who knows what. And we ideally needed everything to be automatically detected, mounted, read, ingested. And with FreeBSD, everything was possible and almost easy, I would say. So I'm glad that some of those tools, well, obviously not what we developed, but some of those concepts organically start making it into the new releases in FreeBSD. I think if we have more of these tools that people that run multiple machines on a day-to-day basis, that they need. If we have more of those tools, then the kind of integration layers can be thinner and thinner, and maybe ultimately integrated into FreeBSD, so that we can treat, we can say that an installation of FreeBSD is not limited to a single machine, but actually can span a cluster. So that's what I'm really kind of looking forward to and excited
Yeah,
about.
I think that's a good takeaway for people, is that all those little scripts and tools you have to integrate your thing with FreeBSD, I know you're embarrassed by the quality of the code, but you got to push that up to upstream, and we'll clean it up. Don't worry. But it's like, oh yes, a little tool that does that would be very handy, or a tool to get the serial number where it doesn't matter if it's a SATA drive or a SAS drive, or if it's connected to this controller or that controller. I just need to know what the serial number is so I can tell the data center monkey to replace the right drive.
That's right.
Right.
If it's something you had to sit down and write a tool for, the odds are good somebody else probably wants it too.
Right. So, well, you both are running active businesses, so you know the cost of that, right? And actually, FreeBSD was not. So we were using a lot of open source solutions. For example, for streaming, we used an open source Flash player, and we hired the open source developers behind it to do some contract work for us. So the idea of the cost of upstreaming is not lost, because whenever you do custom development, it is costing you X, but when you want to do it in an upstream worthy way, it's at least a couple to 3 times as costly, and it's still worth it. You just have to be culturally prepared to go the whole way.
Well,
and sometimes, it's hard to afford.
Right, but then you have to think about it, a year from now, when you want to pull in the newer version of the open source thing and you want your changes to still work.
Oh, exactly. So you culturally have to be about long term, which is, of course, difficult for a lot of startups, but I think it's very important to get that right.
Yep. So the last one we had was, are there any specific areas where you think the BSDs could improve to be more attractive to people building various products on top of them?
Right. Well, that's the kind of question that's like, what are the possible challenges and negatives that we could improve on? But actually, I think it could also be about the strengths that we should just highlight for ourselves and others. I think what attracts a lot of people, and certainly me, to FreeBSD is the engineering culture and kind of focus on excellence, and the balance between good enough and perfect is very important. It's very important not to get carried away into perfect land and fork your own distributions, and kind of that never ends too well. Well, sometimes. Sure. But it's also I think a lot of problems with Linux distributions is that their balance is too close to good enough, and that good enough is not good enough for a lot of businesses. So the balance that FreeBSD strikes is quite unique. I was always thinking about that, actually, why I basically begged Allan to be on the show, is because once you get out of the FreeBSD community and go see other cases of engineering, especially in our new world where everything is about front end and kind of new buzzwords every day, you kind of get painfully nostalgic about everything that is being done in the FreeBSD community, in the FreeBSD project, and also everything you did with FreeBSD in different projects. So that sort of balance between that sort of engineering excellence is hard to come by. And once you kind of go away, you kind of. So I think that is nothing to be ashamed of, in the way that we could be more open about that. We really think that we more in an engineering way, a lot of the solutions in FreeBSD are more correct and workable, and in the long term more reasonable than in a lot of other stacks. And I think community-wise, I really treasure all the hardcore engineers who sometimes come off as harsh, they're perfectly lovable people, like all the Scandinavian developers that we have, like in real life and online, they're perfectly lovable. But when it comes to some technical points, and I'm not talking about bike sheds, but rather like really obvious technical points, they're sometimes not willing to back down and will be very, very,
strident or rigid.
There will be really
Yeah.
specific in which ways you went wrong in your reasoning, and I think that's a very important part of the community that sometimes could be mistaken as unfriendliness, which it couldn't be farther from the truth.
No. It's just a desire to see the technically correct solution.
Right. I think just sticking to that would be the right way to go. I'm really happy that 10 years, over a decade later, like I started to get involved with FreeBSD in 2003, I think. So it's 12 or 13 years for me. And when a lot of other technologies kind of degrade in the quality, but also like culture, engineering culture, FreeBSD is still the same. I kind of sometimes go through all the commit logs, and it's still quite like almost as hardcore as it used to be. It's always happy to see.
Cool.
Well, was there anything else you wanted to mention before we let you go?
I'm very happy. Like I stopped being an active committer a few years ago. Like for a while, I was kind of an active evangelist, so to say, at BSD related and also unrelated conferences. It is always interesting to everyone to hear about FreeBSD and Unix and the kind of engineering perspective that FreeBSD taught me to adhere to. It's also very useful in business and product development. I still feel very much part of this community, whether I'm going to conferences or not, whether I'm handing out on mailing lists and IRC or not. We're still a very tightly-knit community, and it means a lot to, like, probably to all of us, but to me it still means a lot professionally and emotionally, as an engineer, as just a person. Even on social networks, many of us have hundreds of FreeBSD related people, and we enjoy catching up on technical and non-technical issues.
Sure.
So I think that's the feeling that I just happened into, right? I'm very fortunate to be part of this. So thanks for also being part of this family, to you and all the listeners, the audience.
Well, we're all glad to be part of it too. So thank you so much for spending the time with us today, Andrew. I know we had a couple technical glitches getting started, but we appreciate you hanging in there so we can make this happen.
Thanks for having me. I think, really grateful for you doing this stuff. I think this is very good format.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. I know we always have fun recording these, and this was a nice long one, so we didn't leave you hanging on the week we were gone. But we are going to wrap up the show here in a minute. But of course, before we do, we want to mention TarSnap this week, where you can go and get signed up. Of course, the URL, tarsnap.com/BSD Now. Go there. If you talk to Colin or talk to anybody over there, mention that you heard it here on BSD Now, and we pointed you to the way to do proper backups, where TarSnap makes it super easy. You go to their website. They got clients for just about everything under the sun. I think, like we said before, there's even a Windows one. So if you want to SIGWin something, there you go. You can do so. But naturally, if you're paranoid enough, you may want to compile it yourself. And guess what? TarSnap lets you do that too. They post the source code. Go ahead and compile it yourself, audit it. If your business needs to do that for legal reasons, you can do that. Feel free. I mean, how cool is that? And how many backup services let you do that?
Not many.
Not many at all. Yeah, they definitely are trustworthy and will let you look at everything that's happening under the hood. And they've even got bounties. So if you do manage to find a bug, let them know it. You might be able to get some cash as well.
Yep. Colin has a page here highlighting the other open source contributions of TarSnap. So first, there are a bunch of components of Tarsnap that are open source and available to everybody, including the scrypt key derivation function, which is designed to guard against places like the NSA having lots of computers and being able to crack passwords. With scrypt, it requires a lot of memory rather than a lot of CPU power. And that's not something you can optimize with an FPGA.
That's right. That's right.
So RAM is expensive, even if you're the NSA. He's also got the key-value key value data store and his spipe-D secure pipe daemon, which I know he hides all of his SSH and stuff behind. So those are all interesting. Plus, he's made the financial contributions. Obviously, the FreeBSD Foundation sponsoring BSD Can, sponsoring the FreeBSD Developer Summit at BSD Can in last year, but I think this year as well. And he also established an open source software engagement award at his the university he studied at in Canada here.
Yeah, Tarsnap, definitely a good citizen in the BSD community. So you want to run with these guys since they actually even know what BSD is. I mean, come on, let's be honest. A lot of these services, you call them up, and if you're not running Windows or Mac, they're like, I don't know what you want. So Tarsnap, though, makes it work, and it makes it work on Linux, BSD.
And it's only $5.
That's right. $5 to get set up, and you may not even use that for a long time because it's measured in pico dollars. So yeah, very cheap and inexpensive. No reason not to use it. So if you've been hearing us preach about this for a while now, stop listening to us and just go do it and find out for yourself. There's definitely no reason not to.
Yes.
So of course,
we'd love to hear stories about how Tarsnap saved your bacon.
That's right. Yeah, good backup and disaster recovery stories are usually interesting. Those are the ones you hear over dinner when you go to a conference or whatever. Man, I thought we were screwed, and then we found a way to recover the data. So of course, as we close the show today, guys, we just want to leave you with this. Send us your stuff. Send us questions. Send us comments. If you have a show idea or some topic you think we need to discuss on the show, please send that in to feedback@bsdnow.tv. And of course, stories. If you're out there just perusing the internet or reading your feeds or whatnot, and something interesting that's BSD or even slightly BSD related is mentioned, send it over to feedback@bsdnow.tv so we can see it as well, because maybe we don't read the same feeds as you do, or we missed something.
Especially, I'll be traveling for the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
So I miss a lot more. Time zones and just not being at home means that
you're not going to be sitting on the PC all day. You'll probably be out doing conferencey things. Imagine that.
So, make sure you keep us informed on what's happening in the meantime.
That's right. So also next week, we're not going to be live because Allan's going to be over at EuroBSDCon. So he'll still be in Sweden eating what I hear is really good food over there, by the way. So I'm a little jealous. But we will have a whole episode for you. We're not going to leave you hanging. We haven't done a rerun yet. So we're going to make sure we get you another live episode. So be sure to tune in same time next week.